Techniset, for example.
Yeah, if you're a bigger machine shop, to be honest, in fact, one of my customers used the term many times about things being a no-brainer. To be honest, that's how many of them will really see it. It is a no-brainer. You've got to keep that evidence. Why not use a gauge calibration?
We're with Geoff from PSL Datatrack. Now, your modular system, production control software, it's about making engineers more efficient, and it's not just about machining those billets, it's about things like gauge calibration. So it might not sort of make everybody's eyes light up, but it's something you need to do.
Well, it is. You've got to provide evidence that the gauges and instrumentation you've used are within calibration. They get recalibrated when they need to. If you did have an issue, which jobs have used that gauge, and so on. You've got to have it fully traced.
Yeah, and here, perfect example, Ryan at Jota, they've got the gauge calibration system and it just worked perfectly for them essentially.
Well, in terms of audit, you can provide the evidence so you know, let's say for example the gauge is one that you're having calibrated externally, not internally. You've got to provide evidence of who's done the calibration, when it came back from calibration, what the certificate was, do you have a digital copy of it? If you get an audit, can you provide the evidence? Datatrack gauge calibration will give you the option, a couple of clicks, you've got all the evidence you need.
Okay, and again, as we know with Datatrack, is you can scan that document, have it all together in one place, just press that button.
It's that simple.
Nice and simple.
Yeah.
So I'm out there on my machine shop, where's my gauges? I've got complete control of that.
Well, yeah, because the gauges can be issued to works orders. So then if you're looking for a gauge, you know which works order's got it currently. You know how many gauges have been allocated to a specific works order. You know when it's likely to come back based on the works order it's been given to and so on. So you've got traceability of those gauges rather than it's in somebody's toolbox.
So I'm thinking, you know, it's key that I've got my material coming in, I've got my tooling, but also your gauge calibration as well is another key essential, especially if you've got your, well, any machine shop really, but your aerospace accreditation, for example.
Well, for them it's obviously key that they can really produce evidence of what they did use to measure those components. It can't be a loose requirement, it's got to be really fully traced.
And with this gauge calibration system, does it tie in with the other modules within PSL Datatrack?
Well, it does the purchasing modules, without shadow of a doubt. The fact you can allocate gauges to a works order. If you had an issue with a gauge, let's say you've sent a gauge for calibration and it fails, whether it's numerically based on the measurements, it's failed, whether it's an observation. Once that gauge is withdrawn, which the system will do if it fails automatically, you can't allocate it to another works order. So now you're into, okay, do you just cancel the gauge and replace it? Maybe the gauge could be rectified, maybe it could be recalibrated back into range. You can raise a non-conformance that's linked to that gauge if you wish to. That'll deal with the whole process of getting it back into calibration.
Okay, and when you say calibration, you're actually monitoring it in terms of the amount of times it's used or the time it's used, or?
So a bit like a car being serviced every 12 months or 12,000 miles, you can measure a number of characteristics. So it can be a time interval, weeks or months. It could be the number of works orders you've issued the job to. It could be the number of component checks that have been performed. And with all those, you can assign a threshold. Once you get within that threshold, you'll get the warnings of this gauge is coming up for recalibration. So you don't get to the point of using a gauge that's gone beyond its calibration.
And again, I'm getting from this, and it's pretty much the ethos of what you guys do at PSL Datatrack. It's a flexibility, so you can build that system around what you need as a subcontract engineer.
Certainly, if you're a smaller business and you don't feel you need the functionality of gauge calibration, you don't have to have it.
So I can still keep an Excel spreadsheet for if they're small.
Yeah.
I know that's sacrilege in front of you, Geoff.
Well, it is a little bit, but within reason, the idea is about the system should be sized for what they need, not force them to do things that, to be honest, if they're small enough, they don't need to actually systemise them quite the same way.
Okay, so I'm one-man band, I might only need 2 or 3 modules, of which gauge calibration really isn't cost effective. Big machine shop, I mean Techniset, for example.
Yeah, if you're a bigger machine shop, to be honest, in fact one of my customers used the term many times about things being a no-brainer. To be honest, that's how many of them will really see it. It is a no-brainer. You've got to keep that evidence. Why not use a gauge calibration module?
And I'm assuming this is sort of absolute music to the quality managers, engineers in those larger machine, well, any machine shop.
Certainly, the fact that all the guys on the shop floor, as they take gauges, they can actually record the fact they've taken them. Yeah, you're right. He's got the evidence he needs. He's happy.
There you go. So an absolute essential for quality managers. In fact, pretty much any subcontract machine shop out there. That's a gauge calibration module from PSL Datatrack.